The single most important event in human history is the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Those that would argue, well, wait a minute, what about Yeshua coming? His coming is based upon the giving of the Torah. Without the giving of the Torah, we don't have Yeshua appearing. What's interesting here is that the Torah portion detailing this event is named after a pagan priest. How this bear felt so timid toward day one of the Torah portion, Yitro, Y-I-T-R-O, King James translation, Jethro. Yitro is taken from the word yether, meaning remainder or excess, the remnant, or even the idea of excellence. The root is yathar, which means left over, to remain, the left behind part. More on that in a minute. We read in Shemot or Exodus chapter number 18, and it says in verse 1, Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard of all that Elohim had done for Moshe and for Israel, his peoples, that Yahweh had brought Israel out of Mitzrayim. He heard. Who told him? Man, news was traveling fast in those days. They were about 30 days out of Mitzrayim, and already word has spread abroad. So Yitro, knowing that Moshe is no longer in the danger zone of Mitzrayim, brings Zipporah and his two sons, Eleazar and Gershon. And what's interesting is it says that when Moshe meets them, it doesn't say anything about him hugging and kissing his wife and family. It says he kissed his father-in-law. Don't tell me the Torah doesn't have some humor in it. But we go down to verse number 8 and following, and it says, And Moshe told his father-in-law all that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and to the Mizrahites for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them on the way, and how Yahweh had delivered them. And Yitro rejoiced for all the good which Yahweh had done for Israel, whom he delivered out of the hand of the Mitzrahites. And Yitro said, Blessed be Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Mitzrahites and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and has delivered the people from under the hand of the Mitzrahites. Now verse 11 is important. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the mighty ones, indeed in the matter in which they have acted proudly above them. This man, Yitro, the sages of Israel suggest that he was one of three main counselors to Pharaoh, the other two being Balaam, or as we say, Balaam, and Eov, or as we also say, Job. If he was a counselor to Pharaoh, then he knew of the might and the power of that nation, and then to perceive and understand and hear how that Yah had overthrown that entire nation, indeed destroyed Pharaoh and his army on behalf of Israel. He had to consider, man, this is a good thing, and this mighty one of Moshe and the Israeli people, he's someone to consider. It is further understood two things. One is that there was an erroneous belief among the nations, among those outside the covenant, that Yah had chosen to delegate some of his powers to the forces of nature, even to the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planetary bodies. Believing themselves to be incapable of approaching such a much set apart, most set apart mighty one, they chose then to worship the intermediary elements, the sun, moon, stars, and forces of nature, the earth, the wind, water, and fire, and so on, that they chose to worship these elements and attach their belief systems and stories and myths to them, even creating idols to represent them, and believing then these elements, these forces, gave them power or ability They no longer needed to subject themselves to the Creator or to His laws. Not saying that's a correct belief system at all. It just so happens that is a foundation, very likely, for the myths of the various people groups in ancient history. So if Yitro was a believer in this school of thought, we'll say, it is also suggested then that he, as the priest of Midian, he offered his altar to all of these varieties of gods to see which one was the real one or which one held the real power. Hearing the report that took place concerning Moshe and Israel, he's fascinated and he comes to find out more. And so it says in verse 7 that after they greeted one another, they went into the tent. Moshe evidently leaves his wife and children outside, takes his father-in-law inside the tent, and they start having Torah study. When Yitro hears the details of the rumors and news reports that he had heard being spread around, when he sees how that Yah acted strategically against Pharaoh and the might and power that was demonstrated, he's seeing a different Moshe. Moshe's not the same man that he was as a shepherd when he was living with Yitro. He's a dramatically more bold and capable man. He has to see the change and realize something phenomenal has taken place. So he comes out of the tent saying, "Your mighty one is the mighty one," and then he proceeds to be accepted to offer offerings of worship to Yahweh. Where am I going with all of this? Well, people hear things. The rumor mills are about everything imaginable. But for those of you that have chosen to walk a path of righteousness, your former colleagues and acquaintances, they've heard the reports. What they might want to do is see if the reports are true. And if they are true, what kind of change they may have made in you. Herein is a challenge for us. Having received the word, having found Messiah, having found again his commands, applying them to our lives, changing and reordering all things pertaining to ourselves to go back more fully to his word, has it produced something desirable in us? Would someone want to live our life? Would someone want to trade places with you and live as you do? What evidence is it that we are demonstrated that would cause someone to say, "Your life is better than mine. Teach me how to live your way"? Is there a sense of well-being about us? Do we have a demonstration of hope? Is there a smile on our face in spite of whatever circumstances may suggest that we shouldn't have one? Are we energetic? Are our affairs in order? Is our life sustainable? Do we have our family and our home in good order? Or are we complaining and begrudging and nitpicking and negative and frowning and all of the opposites of what we should have? When someone comes to us, they need to be willing to go into the tent with us and hear more about what it is that we have to say. The goal is that we can have such good news about the positive changes that has come to our living that when we express these to others, that they say, that's awesome. How do I get involved with this? Show me the way. They've tried everything else. They've sought after every other god and power imaginable. We must reveal that we have found the real and genuine one, not something in the middle, but all the way back to the top.
Be glad to whom you are connected today and show it to someone. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, shalom.